Hello, my brethren and sistren. Hello, my fellow heathens. So this is a video response to InfoWars, who had a gentleman named Mark Passio on their program. So I want to give a warning to people out there, people who are trying to follow in the steps of people like William Bill Schnoebelen, Zachary King, all of these people like this. 20 years, 30 years ago, it was very difficult for us as pagans, to network and to find information, vet people, and go through all of this stuff. Now we just pretty much send an email and we can find out if you were legitimately a member of a certain organization or not. So this is just a fair warning for people like 50 Cent Short here who want to lie. We're going to find out you're lying, and we're going to expose you for the fraud and the charlatan that you are. So, I hope you enjoy this video.
My guest today is Mark Passio. He is an independent researcher.
Translation: he has no formal training or degrees.
Radio talk show host.
Translation: he started a podcast in his mother's basement.
A public speaker and also a freedom activist.
Something tells me his idea of freedom is actually restricting another's freedom.
From Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and he has assembled a vast amount of knowledge on occultism.
Assembled a vast amount of knowledge? I would not exactly say that. I think he has a very extreme and unique perspective on his own interpretation. That's what I would say.
Spirituality, metaphysics, symbology, and consciousness.
I can tell already this is going to be filled with nothing but bullshit.
You can find all of that information on his website, whatonearthishappening.com.
What the hell are you talking about.com? Did I get that website right? Was it whatthehellsgoingon.com, or was it whatthehellare-you-talking-about.com?
As well as freeyourmindconference.com. And he joins me today to talk about occultism and mind control. So Mark, thank you for joining us today. I know we've got a lot to talk about in a short amount of time. So I wanted to kind of give a tri-part question here first, just kind of give a little bit of a backstory. I've heard you say in a few of your lectures that you were actually a practitioner of the dark occult. Obviously, this is where some of your expertise comes from. You can confirm that these occultic symbols are being employed. They do have power.
Occultic symbols. Oh boy. Okay. Does your toaster have power? Does your bookshelf have power? Does your doorway have power? Do your windows have power? Is it the shape of an object that gives it power? No. Shapes have no power. They might have meaning, depending upon what function they serve and in what context they are, but by themselves, they have no power. So already, just to begin, I can see this is just going to be a big, huge, steaming pile of bullshit.
But what does that mean? What does that mean?
You want to know what it means? I'll tell you what it means. It means that anybody who's paid money to listen to this charlatan speak on the topic of the occult should ask for their money back. That's what it means.
As far as you were practicing, was that like Satanism, Luciferianism, some sort of other dark occult that I don't really know about? And then, of course, what compelled you to kind of seek out that knowledge, and what was it that helped you kind of realize that maybe that wasn't where you wanted to spend your energy?
I think it's when he realized, hey, I might be able to make some money off the gullible doing this.
Sure, that's a really great question. Well, in my youth, I kind of accepted, without much questioning, a lot of the religious dogma and indoctrination that I had been given by family members and school teachers. And I come from a pretty standard Roman Catholic Italian background in South Philadelphia. And my family was kind of the type that never really challenged belief systems, certainly never questioned authority, anything like that. And, you know, back then when I was given a lot of those dogmatic beliefs and kind of accepted them, I certainly lacked a lot of the knowledge about what religious indoctrination is about and why it's done. I certainly didn't know anything about astrotheology at that time. And a lot of that knowledge probably could have put some of that indoctrination into perspective. But since I lacked it, my disillusionment with modern organized religion turned into extreme anger.
Ah, so he's going for the I hate God angle. This should be interesting.
And I acted upon that anger by attempting to seek out the antithesis of religion, the antithesis of the system into which I was born. And I found it in the form of the dark occult, dark occultism.
Just calling something dark doesn't make it dark.
Particularly Satanism, which was the type of dark occultism that I gravitated toward.
Just because some Satanists do use the occult, it does not mean that one is synonymous with the other. There are many occultists who study the occult who are not necessarily Satanists.
And I espoused a lot of satanic beliefs and ideologies, particularly through writing and music. Some of my work was eventually recognized by Anton LaVey.
I highly doubt that, but you know what? I'm going to debunk so much of this crap that you're going to be spewing out of your mouth. I'm going to give you this one. I'm going to just give you this one. Let's just say Anton LaVey just loved your music, just could not get enough of it. I'll give you that one.
Who was the high priest of the organization known as the Church of Satan.
He started the church, and that is not the title that he preferred to go by, nor is that the title people gave him.
At that time, he has since died. But he asked me to take part in the Church of Satan and become a priest within its membership.
Bullshit. Unless you can provide some kind of documentation, some kind of proof that you were a member, a canceled check, subscription to a newsletter, you were not a member. And I'm calling bullshit. I'm calling you out.
And I accepted that offer and I became a priest in the Church of Satan. And what my job was to do was basically, for the most part, explain the ideology of Satanism to people in an attempt to take more people into the ranks of that ideology.
No, this is another huge steaming pile of bullshit. The Church of Satan on their website clearly states that they do not proselytize people. Links to the Church of Satan's website is below. So he claims that he was asked by Anton LaVey to proselytize and try to convert people to Satanism. So I contacted the Church of Satan, and they responded back to me, and they have no record of Mark Passio. Matter of fact, here's the email right here. So this is the email that I received from the Church of Satan. We have so far found no record of anyone named Mark Passio ever having membership in the Church of Satan. Recruitment is not something we do, as we expect people to come to our literature of their own free will. So any claims of him being some sort of proselytizer for us would be utterly false. Prior to his death, I worked directly with Anton LaVey as a member of his Council of Nine, and thus am familiar with the high-ranking members of the organization, particularly anyone who would be dealing with the public, as I was one of the chief spokespersons and often coordinated other representatives as part of my responsibilities administering the Church of Satan. Magus Peter Gilmore, High Priest, Church of Satan. So I would like to thank Magus Peter Gilmore for his response to my email. I really appreciate it.
As my involvement with Satanism in general, not just the Church of Satan organization, grew, I became aware that this wasn't an isolated group of individuals that were just working with occulted or hidden knowledge in order to essentially grow their own personal power.
Now the doors of sanity fly off their hinges and all the conspiracy theories are going to start spewing forth.
But they were groups, internetworked groups of people who were working together, and they came from an eclectic array of people from every walk of life, every social institution that you could imagine. There were Satanists placed in positions of high power and influence within those institutions, including politics, banking, law, military, law enforcement, entertainment, technology, medicine, education, and every other area of our lives.
Whoa, that is so weird. Now that I think of it, there's all these Christians who have infiltrated our society. We see them in banking, we see them in the military, we see them in our police force. There are all these Christians infiltrating all of these various positions in our society. It doesn't matter what anyone's particular religious belief is. That's their religious belief. When they're filling roles in society, it doesn't mean that they suddenly infect everybody around them and everybody converts to their way of thinking. And if this is what you actually believe, your mind is suffering from some sort of mental retardation.
And they were not isolated individuals that were just trying to increase their own personal power and influence. They were working together as a tight-knit unit toward a common goal, and that common goal was to increase their own collective power at the expense of everyone else's rights and freedoms. When I became aware that that's what the satanic hierarchical network that is in place in this world was all about, that it was in fact about slavery.
You mean like how many Christians want to ban gay marriage and not allow women the freedom of choice to have an abortion or not? You mean like that?
My consciousness, my conscience, I'm sorry, would not allow me to proceed any further with involvement in these groups. And I began to basically pull back from my involvement. And people will often say, well, weren't they extremely angered by that? And didn't they try to keep you in the group? You know, they were initially trying to groom me for higher levels of involvement.
According to you and your conspiracy nut friends, hasn't this been going on for years now? I mean, if they are so ingrained in our society and they have so much control and so much influence, don't you think they would have a little more to show for it? I mean, all they're doing is putting their image on logos in snack foods?
With other, network and think tank groups that, go much higher into politics and certainly into eugenics operations. But when I became aware of what the overarching agenda of the whole satanic hierarchical network that's in place in the world was about, I desisted with my involvement in those groups. And people will ask, well, didn't they try to reel you back in? Didn't they threaten you? They were absolutely unconcerned with my leaving. They simply basically said, there's nothing that you can do to change anything. We have people's minds and we have society right where we want it. And go and do your worst and tell people about what you know. And you're going to be banging your head against a concrete wall for the rest of your natural life. So go and do your worst because there's nothing that you could possibly do to hurt us. That was their attitude when I left.
Let's just go ahead and play along with your little game here. So let's say that there is this organization that has infiltrated our military, our government, our hospitals, our police force, the FBI, the CIA, and this highly secretive group probably has all kinds of people inside of this group who want to rise on the ranks and become more and more and more powerful. After all, that's what they want, more power. And so of all of these candidates who were probably much more qualified than you, they ignored all of these people and they went and they chose you. Just playing along this hypothetical situation, I don't think so. I don't think they would have chosen you. I think they would have chosen somebody who was a much more better candidate.
Right. Well, it is like banging your head against a wall. And there are such extreme forces keeping people hypnotized. I mean, just talking about Anton LaVey or the Church of Satan, just the ties with the NSA. I mean,
Sure.
If you want to talk about the surveillance and control, I mean, there is the upper echelons of government. And here was a secret program with the NSA that wasn't exposed until just recently. Obviously, it's been going on for quite some time.
Whatever. Let's break this paranoid, delusional thinking down a little bit. There is a gentleman by the name of Michael Aquino who is in the Temple of Set, or who started the Temple of Set, which branched off from the Church of Satan in 1975. Now, Michael Aquino just happens to be in the military. The branch of the military that he is now in is PSYOPs, which could be considered also a branch of the National Security Agency. But just because this man is in the military does not mean that there is some kind of a plan to take over the world by the military. And it does not mean that the military is controlled by Satanists. That's like saying that somebody who's a Hindu who rises up in the ranks of the military suddenly is going to be converting everybody to Hinduism or Christianity or any number of any other religion. Just because Michael Aquino is a Satanist, if anything, has made it more difficult for him to rise in the ranks.
I consider the groups I was involved in very low level, certainly not high level by any stretch of the imagination. I do consider that LaVey was sort of a puppet for these higher level satanic networks and groups, and certainly worked with governmental institutions during the time that he was alive. And, most people don't really understand what the ideology of Satanism is. They think it's about devil worship. It has nothing to do with the worship of the Christian notion of the devil.
That kind of depends upon which type of Satanism you're talking about, but please continue on.
Satanism basically has four main tenets or overarching principles of belief.
I don't suppose you're going to give a citation or a reference to these satanic four tenets or overarching principles? I thought not. Looking at the Church of Satan's website, they have the 9 satanic statements, the 11 satanic rules of the earth, and the 9 satanic sins. None of them, and nowhere, not even in the Satanic Bible, does it mention anything about the 4 satanic tenets or overarching principles. So, like most of the stuff that's coming out of your mouth, again, this is bullshit.
And that is that self-preservation is the highest goal, and you should do whatever you can to advance your personal power and influence in the world, no matter who you really have to walk all over, step on, or hurt to get what you want. That's really the number one tenet. And if you look at society, most of society is stuck in that cutthroat dog-eat-dog mentality. Moral relativism is the second major tenet, which is the idea that there's really no such thing as objective standards of right and wrong behavior, that we as human beings can get to basically decide upon our whims what right and wrong are, and base our actions accordingly. And if you look at most of society, I would say more people than not are moral relativists than moral objectivists, who think that there is an objective standard of right and wrong behavior. So that's also very pervasive in society. The third major tenet is social Darwinism, the idea that the most ruthless in society have some sort of a predetermined or predestined right to basically rule over everybody else in society because their genetics got them there and made them fit for rulership.
This whole thing about survival of the fittest is always taken to such an extreme, and it's not really put into a certain perspective. The dominant genes, the dominant traits are carried on from generation to generation. If you have 2 creatures, one has let's say a spotted pattern and another one has let's say no pattern or a different pattern, if the genes of the animal with the spotted pattern somehow survives because they aren't seen by predators, that gene is carried on to the next cycle of life. Chances are those animals' babies are going to have that spotted design because that is a beneficial design for the survival of that animal. So it's not exactly survival of the fittest as much as it is survival of genetics. If an animal does not reproduce, its genes do not carry on, and those genes fall away. So it's not that survival of the fittest, it's survival of whoever survives.
And, many people will actually think like that and think that that's okay, that that's just the natural order or the way things are. So that's also very pervasive in our society. And finally, the fourth main pillar of Satanism is eugenics, the idea that those who are socially fit to rule, and they're the fittest in society, and therefore they've come out on top and they're ruling the roost, well, they can get to decide who basically propagates their genes and who does not, or in other words, who gets to live and who dies, who must die.
Wow.
No. You mean, wow, what a load of bullshit, because that's what this is. This is bullshit.
That's incredible, because that's obviously so many things that we're trying to expose here at InfoWars. And, we talk about this self-preservation thing a lot, even when you see these members of secret societies, and how you think, how do these people literally get away with murder?
Literally get away with murder? What exactly are you referring to? And you can't just throw out a loaded comment like that without giving some kind of a reference to it.
Or sometimes there are awful things that are hidden, pedosadism.
This is filled with so much bullshit. So again, you're just going to throw out this highly charged word, you're going to leave it up to the imagination of your audience, and you're not going to give any kind of a citation, any kind of a reference, any kind of information whatsoever. You're just going to throw that out there and just expect people to take it.
Things like that you wonder, how are these people in the law enforcement or politics, how are these crimes being covered up?
They are not, and they have not been committed. If you have any information to any crime that has been committed, and you don't want to be charged with either obstructing justice or being involved in this, I highly suggest you give all of this information to the proper authorities. Oh, but I forget, the proper authorities, the police, the CIA, the FBI, they're all in this great grand conspiracy of the Satanist Illuminati, so that's not going to work.
But it is this sort of secret society, self-preservation system that they have to protect each other and protect this overarching, unforeseen hand that's sort of controlling everything.
AKA made up bullshit.
So what about these occultic symbols that they're using and kind of pervading our society? What's out there that you know of, and how is it being used?
Oh boy, we are in for some entertainment here.
Well, I think a good precursor to this would be to simply explain what the occult is, because many people hear that word and they really don't understand what it means, and they have an erroneous perception of what occultism in general is.
Oh, I love hearing these definitions. They just assume it's going to be some kind of a gotcha moment.
The word occult is derived from the Latin language. It comes from the Latin adjective occultus. Occultus in Latin simply means hidden from sight. And, the verb occultare in Latin, occultare, means to hide, to conceal, or to keep secret. So both of these words in Latin are in turn derived from the Latin word oculus. Oculus means eye. So it all has to do with what can be seen and what is not easily seen, that which is hidden from view, which is veiled from our sight, which is difficult to see because in many cases it operates in the realm of the unseen or the spiritual realm. And that's all the occult is. The occult is knowledge that has been hidden for particular reasons, and we can get into what those reasons are, but it's knowledge that is hidden and held by very few people.
So, first of all, we need to back up to about the 15th century, let's say Italy, Germany. We have to understand that back then, the leading universities and the leading forms of education were run by the church. So, the church were in charge of education, teaching people to read and write, teaching them history, philosophy, etc., etc. There was a body of knowledge which was considered to be heretical. It was considered to be information that was not supported by the church. Either they believed it was heretical and they just did not teach it, or they felt that it corrupted or somehow went against the teachings of the church. This body of knowledge became hidden. It became stuff that students learned on their own, or they studied on their own, or that were passed on to them by their other fellow students. So this body of knowledge became the occult. It became hidden knowledge. And this is how we get the term occult today. So it is not that this is information that was supposed to be hidden per se by the general populace, as much as it was hidden by the church because it was considered to be heretical. And also, as a side note, most of the knowledge that has advanced civilization, anything that is considered to be heretical, would be considered to be occult. For example, the idea of the geocentric model versus the heliocentric model that Copernicus and Galileo suffered for. Basically, considering that the sun is at the center of our universe, goes against the geocentric, making the earth the center of the world, and thus God is made the earth the center of the world. If we are no longer the center of the universe, then that's heretical. It goes against the teaching of the church. So that is one example of information that was suppressed or hidden or occulted.
When you hide and hold very important knowledge tight to yourself, and you try to keep it sequestered from everyone else, what you are doing in that instance is you are creating a power differential through the knowledge differential that you've created. I mean, we've all heard the term knowledge is power. I would have a slightly different take, and I would say knowledge which is applied can be converted into real world power.
Yes, but you have to understand who was suppressing the power. Not the occultists were suppressing the power. It was the church who was suppressing that power or that knowledge. And it was considered to be heretical. And so that is why they suppressed it. That is why it became hidden. That is why it became the occult or the hidden knowledge.
And that is what these dark occultists do, who are using this knowledge certainly not to uplift humanity. They're using it to create a power differential in the world so that they can stay entrenched in power and they could take advantage of everyone else who is trapped in their ignorance.
You've got that completely turned upside down. If we would not have advanced the way that we have and challenged the church on many of the various different things that were considered heresy, we would probably still be living before the Enlightenment period. The fact that we finally accepted the heliocentric model, that we accepted gravity, and we accepted all these other things that were considered to be heretical by the church, allowed our civilization to advance. So it is actually that occulted or that hidden knowledge which led to, from alchemy, chemistry, from astrophysics, from astronomy to astrophysics and astronomy, from philosophy to philosophy that we have today, mathematics, etc. So this hidden knowledge had a great deal of influence for benefiting mankind.
The occult is simply hidden knowledge held by very few people who exploit that knowledge at the expense of all of the ignorant people, the ignorant masses who have no idea what that knowledge is or how it works.
Wow, that sounds really elitist on your part.
Now, the next question that would naturally come up for people is, well, what is the knowledge of the occult?
The occult is made up of a huge body of ancient philosophies concerning the mechanics of the universe. The elements, alchemy, esoteric knowledge, spirit communication, astrology, Kabbalah, Christian mysticism, archaic alphabets, planetary associations, Hermeticism, and has influenced many ritual and ceremonial orders, and even mathematics.
What type of knowledge are we really referring to or talking about here when we talk about occultism in general? Occultism is a body of science which is just not generally known to the wide body of human beings.
Calling the occult today a science is a bit of a stretch. We should recognize how much the occult has influenced, especially the Enlightenment, which led up to the Industrial Revolution. But we look back on the occult now, at least the occult back before the 18th century, and we kind of look at it like, what were they thinking? But calling the occult today a science is a bit of a stretch.
It's hidden knowledge about two overarching fields of study of human endeavor, and that is the human psyche, the mind, and how the mind works, all of its inner workings and operations, okay? How the psyche actually operates, what human motivations are and how they work. I would call this the inner world of the individual. And in the occult, this is often referred to as the lesser arcana, or the body of knowledge that constitutes the microcosmic world.
Psychology really didn't come to become a science and very well known until about the 1800s. And the occult goes back to probably about the 15th century when it was at its height. And back then they believed that many disorders were spirits. And psychology, again, really wasn't thought of as science until the 1800s. So, I'm sorry, Mark, but so far your understanding of the occult is pretty superficial, and it seems to be contrived and made up.
In other words, the world of the individual, the psyche. Then there's a second body of knowledge that is about the greater spiritual laws that ultimately the entire universe is bound by and works according to. This would be considered the major or greater arcana of knowledge, or the macrocosmic world. This is knowledge about the spiritual laws of the universe.
These seem to be really focused laws on the human psyche, which really occultism does not speak on. And you seem to be focusing this and moving this in a certain direction that occultism just doesn't lead to. Instead, what you are doing is you are forcing it in this direction, and I can only assume to suit some sort of an agenda.
And also the physical sciences, because much of the physical sciences workings is also occulted and hidden from us, so that our society doesn't progress and advance in ways that the people who currently hold the reins of our society don't want it to.
Occultism is all about knowledge. Some of the most famous philosophers and scientists before the 1800s were occultists and alchemists. Sir Isaac Newton wrote more books on the occult than he did on optics and gravity. So the occult is nothing but knowledge.
So we have to understand that there's a body of spiritual, or what I simply refer to spiritual laws, or what I simply refer to as natural law in my work, that is a part of the occult knowledge. It's a part of the macrocosmic knowledge that comprises what is known as the major arcana, or the greater arcana of occult knowledge.
Your use of the word greater arcana and lesser arcana really only pertains to the tarot. Using it in every other context really shows just how ignorant you are of occultism, and it's really making you look stupid, so I suggest you stop doing it.
That being said, those two bodies of knowledge really constitute everything that humanity needs to understand to become free. That's why it is hidden. That's why it is occulted, because the people who are currently enslaving humanity and who are currently running our society don't want the playing field to be leveled by this knowledge being understood by people.
I'm not even going to address that. That is just absurd and ridiculous hyperbole. And unless you can prove it somehow, or give some kind of a concrete example or some kind of a reference or a citation, I'm just going to fucking ignore that, because it's bullshit. Like most of the other stuff that's been coming out of your mouth so far, it's just more bullshit.
Because if people understood it en masse, they would be able to empower and free themselves from what is being done to them, from them being kept in the condition of human slavery as they are right now.
And let me guess, Christianity can set them free, right?
Occult knowledge is neither good or bad. It's not something that is inherently positive or negative. The consciousness of the wielder of that knowledge will ultimately determine whether that knowledge is actually being applied for good or ill.
Wow. That is like the most accurate thing that's come out of your mouth so far, Mark. Yes, whatever you do with your knowledge and how you apply it determines whether or not it is good or bad. Wow, I'm actually stunned by this.
In other words, either for the uplift of humanity by spreading it and distributing that knowledge throughout.
You mean like during the Enlightenment, which led to the Industrial Revolution, which led to the Electrical Revolution, which led to the Computer Revolution, which allows you to be on YouTube in the first place?
The human population, and therefore enlightening people and making them be able to be informed and make their own good choices and good decisions in harmony with the spiritual laws of nature, natural law, or whether that knowledge, that occulted knowledge, will be used for ill, for evil purposes, for control, for manipulation over the people who currently lack it and are ignorant of it.
This sounds so good force versus the bad force, or good versus evil. It's so simplistic and Zoroastrian.
And that's the difference that I would describe between light occultism, or what I simply have come to call de-occultism, which is what I consider myself, a de-occultist, someone who is trying to bring that hidden knowledge out into the light of day for all to see and understand.
Well, I consider you a BS occultist, meaning you are an occultist bullshitter. If this is really what you wanted to do, why not portray it accurately? And why include all of this unnecessary crap? But of course, I suggest you learn about the occult first before you teach it to people.
Versus dark occultism. Dark occultists want to deliberately hide and keep that knowledge hidden in order to create and maintain that power differential that they currently have.
Well, they are doing a horrible job.
Well, exactly, because as long as they can keep a false reality, people just kind of in a fog, no one can change the reality.
No one puts people in a fog. People put themselves in a fog, you idiot.
Because they don't actually have a grasp of what reality actually is.
Reality is understanding that no cabal of Satanists, Illuminati are running the world.
They're just in a trance with all of this symbolism bombarding them everywhere. Obviously, the InfoWars viewers, they know all about, the all-seeing eye and the pentagram and these sorts of things. But this symbolism is in advertising, just basic advertising.
This tired, old argument. There are anyone with a simple understanding of graphic design understands that there are basic shapes throughout every single culture. The occult does not have any ownership on these universal symbols. Triangles, squares, circles, and even crosses are universal symbols. Everyone uses them, and there is no way you can create a picture, a logo, or anything without using one of these simple shapes.
Talk to me a little about that.
Sure, it really goes quite deep, and I think this example that I would like to bring up is going to really illustrate what the occult truly is and how it's applied in society, and how it works upon the psyche of individuals that have no idea about the symbols that are used against them, and they have no idea about the deep inner knowledge of the psyche that is wielded over them by people who do very deeply understand it.
What a load of crap.
To understand this example, we have to just simply delve into the world of archetypes, which are types of basically rudimentary type symbols. An archetype is considered an original pattern from which other patterns or other more advanced type symbols are basically based.
You gotta be fucking kidding me. These are Zener cards. All you did was you took out that squiggly line and you put in a triangle and you call these the occult symbols. These are Zener cards. Is this the extent of your occult knowledge? You use the lesser and the greater arcana to describe the occult, and then you use Zener cards? Anyone who has taken any class from you on the occult, in my humble opinion, should demand their money back, because you don't know anything.
Okay, so it's a model or an original form or a prototype of some kind. And there's some basic symbolic archetypes. Of course, we have the circle, which represents infinity and eternity and perfection and the divine. The circle has always kind of been considered a shape that represents the divine. It's based on a number that cannot really be ever pinned down to exactitude, pi, of course. And, it's just a symbol that has represented perfection throughout all different traditions in human history.
I'm going to stop this right here because this video is getting long enough, and we will pick this up next week. So again, this is Lilokin. Thank you so much, and blessed be.